We'll proceed anyway, okay? First of all, welcome everybody, and thank you all for coming out tonight. We should be here tonight. We should all be at home tonight. The people from Ukraine should be at home in their own homes in Ukraine, but that unfortunately is the way it is. So we're here tonight to remember the last 4 years, and I'm delighted to have John Connors here, who's done an awful lot of work here and in Ukraine to highlight the cause of Ukraine. So before we start, may I ask everybody to please turn off your mobile, because we're going to have a minute of silence in a second, okay? Now I'm going to hand you over to John Connors. Thank you.
And thank you all for being here this evening on the 70th anniversary. I'm sure that 4 years ago today you looked at the news, the 6-1 news, and you saw the tanks of the army of the Russian Federation going into Ukraine. Who would have thought, who would have dreamt even in their wildest dreams, that 4 years later we would still be here, and that Ukraine will still be standing tall and defiant. Let's begin our encounter this evening with a moment of silence in memory of all Ukrainians who lost their lives to Russian aggression. The footage in that video was taken in the city of Ivano-Frankivsk in Ukraine. When I visited that city last November, and at 9 o'clock every morning, right across Ukraine, a moment of silence is observed in memory of the fallen heroes. It is now my pleasure to welcome Councillor Penny Ryan, Cahira of Thurles Municipal District, to speak to us and to formally open our encounter here this evening. Put your hands together, please, for Councillor Ryan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're very welcome here this evening as we come together to reflect. The war in Ukraine, sparked by Russia's invasion in 2022, has reshaped Europe in ways few could have imagined. For Ireland, though geographically distant from the battlefields and the conflict, the impact was felt immediately and in a profound manner. This conflict heightened awareness of Europe's security and our economic interdependence. As a member of the European Union, Ireland has stood in solidarity with Ukraine. Without doubt, the most visible impact has been a human one. Since the invasion, Ireland has welcomed over 10,000 people, fleeing the violence and destruction in Ukraine. Families arrived seeking nothing more than safety. Communities such as our own here in the Thurles Municipal District opened sports clubs, homes, parks and hotels. The Irish response has not been without strain, and housing shortages were evident and some solutions emerged, such as the 62 modular homes which were provided at the Gorta Taggart site in Thurles to provide homes for people in this most difficult time. Ireland's own history of immigration, famine and conflict has shaped a deep empathy for those displaced by war. We know what it means to seek refuge, to depend on the kindness of strangers. Our long-standing commitment to human rights and international cooperation allows Ireland to offer protection at such trying times. Ireland has adopted a compassionate approach, not because it's always easy, but because it's the right thing. And just to reflect on the words of Antonio Guterres, we have a moral obligation to protect and assist those who are forced to flee their homes.
Thank you. offensive violence.
Jackie, is it welcome? Sorry, no,
We've had messages of support, short videos of support from Taoiseach Micheál Martin, and also from the leader of the Labour Party, Vanna Patrick, Simon Harris, Taoiseach, and leader of the Fine Gael Party, also conveyed his good wishes to us this evening. But unfortunately, it was my mistake. I sent the email to the wrong email address, and it was too late for him to do so. So, Micheál Martin and Vanna Patrick, they recorded messages, but I think our technology maybe is not obliging us to see as much as we would like for that to happen. So,
listen, we'll move on, okay?
we will move on.
This one down here, 6.
Four years ago, the most horrific stories began to reach our ears and the news medias. And we heard the most terrible of things, and in the intervening 4 years, the story has not improved. And I have travelled to Ukraine and met many eyewitnesses, many survivors, and we heard the most terrible and heartbreaking stories. There are people who are trained in this field, journalists for example, who experience these things in the most war-torn spots. And yet, some of them have been so traumatized by what they have seen and what they have felt that they felt compelled to write about it. And our first excerpt is going to be read by Paul. It's about a journalist who interviewed a young girl called Leah in the city of Zaporizhia. Welcome, Paul.
Good evening. I conducted an interview with a child who survived the Mariupol theatre murders. I will remember it for the rest of my life. Little Lyra lost her mother, father, and little sister Carolina, aged 2 years and 7 months. Carolina suffered under a concrete slab, and her mother was burnt alive. And all of this was in front of the little child. Based on a father's instinct, I hugged Lyra, and with all the pain that was almost palpable around this child, she literally clung to me like a magnet would to steel. When I returned to the hotel in Zaporizhia, I drank a bottle of whiskey, trying to somehow wash away the pain, but it failed. It was just a case when you drink and you cannot get drunk. Eternal memory to all who died in Mariupol and in all Ukraine. And eternal hell to those who did this to us.
When I visited Ukraine in November, I went to a town called Bilahorka, and went there to meet two ladies who I had befriended in Ireland. They had returned to their native town. And due to a confusion in location, I ended up outside the wrong apartment complex. But we eventually found a way to where Alona and her family were living. Alona came and she collected us from that place. And on the 27th of January, I was watching the news, and that apartment that we stood in front of was struck by a missile. And a 40-year-old woman and her partner were killed in that attack. There was a journalist with Radio Free Europe who was in Bilahorka at that time, and he wrote about this event. And he said, I saw a child lying on a sofa wrapped in a blanket, crying and calling for her mother. Fire was already spreading from above. I grabbed the child, carried her outside, handed her to a neighbour, and went back inside. When I took her out, she started shaking and clung to me. In 10 years of war, I've never felt anything like this, holding a 4-year-old child who is crying, knowing that her mother is dead. And I'm sure when you watched your television screens 4 years ago, you saw the mayhem and chaos that ensued at the railway stations of Kiev and Lviv and other cities around Ukraine as people trying to flee. And I'm sure you watched that and perhaps you remember looking at that and seeing those terrible scenes. But can we ever understand, or can we ever imagine, but we must try to somehow imagine the terror that those people feel as they leave their country and search for safety and try to recreate their lives in a country where perhaps they do not understand the alphabet, leave alone the language. And we have one story here about a boy lost at a Russian checkpoint as he evacuated anniv. And I call him Margaret to read that. The name of the story is "I am waiting for my mom."
He stood by the bus and cried. His cheeks had black stripes from dirty fingers. He wiped away the tears with his palm and covered his little face with his hand. He seemed to be in terrible grief. We were stopped at yet another Russian checkpoint. 5 buses were parked very close together and people were bumping off each other as they alighted. Berdyansk, Zaporizhzhia. Previously, the distance between these cities was about 4 hours. Spring of 2022, between Berdyansk and Zaporizhzhia was a highway of misery and death, in the literal meaning of those words. It was a journey through fire and fear. From Berdyansk, people were fleeing because it was there the Russian occupiers were. Zaporizhzhia, it was a dream to get there because there was a free Ukraine. To escape, we had to pass shelling, Russian checkpoints, minefields, blown up cars on the roadside, and answer the questions of alien beings with machine guns pointed at us. We stood, cuddled up to each other in a closed, isolated cabin with windows closed and almost no air. This was no salon, it was a dungeon, filled with menace and horror. This little boy cried near the first staircase of the huge bus. He was most likely no more than 6. I could not tell his age. He looked lonely and miserable. People bypassed him like he was lost in a department store. I walked up and asked, "Where's your mom?" Some woman in a blue jacket said quietly, "Mom was taken." She sounded suspicious to the interrogators, and the little boy was agitated. They were riding together. We were all taken off the buses. Passports were checked. We were standing in a half circle, and orcs with rifles approached each person and looked in their face, sometimes very carefully and long. If they held their gaze, there was an unpleasant chill in the chest. We were more than creatures, but we were weak, tired and exhausted. We were supported by the hate of our enemy and the desire for safety, but they had guns and we were defenceless. Some Russian clown in army uniform loudly screamed at the crowd of humiliated and broken people, "Slava Ukraini, glory to Ukraine." I turned my head sharply and saw how next to me a boy of about 15 years trembled. The freaks with guns began to laugh, and the provocateur happily announced, "I decided to check, maybe someone would respond out of surprise." The little boy was standing next to a bus. No one was allowed to board. I asked the driver, "Are you going to delay for a little while? We must wait for his mom." He replied, "Are you crazy? We cannot wait, we're travelling in a convoy." I took the boy by the hand. He was shaking. "Let's go looking for Mom. Let's ask that she be released." The driver said, "You do not have to do this. You're all going to be detained. If they took her away, they will not let her go. I know, this is not the first time I have transported people to occupied territory." Powerlessness is very bad. It is bad when fear is stronger than conscience, but on this occasion, courage won. I had a pack of cookies in my jacket pocket. I bought them in some store in Bergansk. I got a cookie and asked the boy, would you like one? Get on the bus, Mum will come over later. He said, I don't want to eat, I am waiting for my mum. To not go crazy, I jokingly suggested the boy swap Mum for a pack of cookies. I am conquered by fear. Do you know what is stronger than fear? Shame. Shame is stronger than fear, so I remained by his side. The two of us were standing next to the bus and the people passed us by. We were like stones on the shore, around which the sea waves burst. They washed but could not move them. His mother showed up and the last of the people emerged from the interrogation room. She ran towards the bus as if she was flying in the air, and he saw her in the distance. Mom came for me. He beamed through his tear-sodden little face. Now you can give me a cookie if you want. I asked what his name was, and he replied, Hostage. In April 2022, from Bergansk to Zaporizhzhia, we drove more than 15 hours. We were the lucky ones.
I would now like to introduce you to a young lady called Katerina Savenko. And Katerina Savenko kept a diary for the first, I think, 36 days of the war in Ukraine. It gives a graphic, personal and emotional account of what she and her family and loved ones endured. I call now Mary Alice to read an excerpt from Katerina Savenko's diary.
Day 21, March 16th, 2022, Wednesday. It was relatively quiet all day. Could it be all over? Or is this the beginning of the end? Today we buried Aunt Valia. None of the men dared to go to the cemetery, so it was unanimously decided to bury her in the yard. How awful. The men dug a grave. We managed to get a coffin. All the neighbours gathered in the yard to bid farewell to this wonderful woman, born and died during wartime. May her soul rest in peace. Olya and I went to the Curves, hoping to find out where to get cigarettes and charge our gadgets. They are sitting on their suitcases, wanting to leave, but it is completely unknown whether it is feasible. On the way back, we stopped by Annie Yankin's. I called, knocked on the gate, but no one came out. Their yard was in disarray. Most likely they had gone somewhere. On the way, we met Artem Lucan, my daughter Nanya's friend. The boy, always friendly and sunny, has aged beyond his years. He didn't recognize me. Perhaps I was right about the 80-year-old grandmother. God bless you, child. My dear sister, if only you knew how we live, how much horror each resident of our cities and other cities of our beautiful country must endure. If only you could see the destroyed city, so dear and beloved. If only you heard the sounds of the bursting shells hitting homes and human lives. If only you saw the abandoned animals with their empty, homeless eyes. Do you hear the groan of the earth? Do you hear the groans of the people, the children, the elders, men and women, mothers with babies? I don't tire of sending you text messages which do not reach you. I don't tire of believing that we will all survive so that our descendants may know what really happened in Ukraine in 2022. If you hear me and the cries of frightened people, strong and weak, those who have not lost hope, and those who have despaired, your heart would already have shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces. Stop listening to me, live and don't lose hope. We are alive, and we will definitely see each other when the war ends. And we will rejoice in the simplest things. Silence, the singing of the birds, the smile of loved ones, plain simple food, water and warmth from the fire, and peace. Wait, my dear, and our patience will be rewarded. Lord, save and protect us. Amen. What unit of measurement can truly justify human sorrow? How many human tears have been shed? They can't even compare to the amount of water in the world ocean. How to measure the distance to God, to whom millions of impoverished people send their pleas? Is there a name for the inhumanity of the people who started this senseless bloody war, crippling so many lives? If only we knew whom to ask. If only we knew who will answer for all the suffering of my people, for the broken spirit and the unbreakable despair.
I don't think that passage needs any commentary. It speaks for itself. And perhaps in the middle of all this emotion, Katrina and her friends will give us some music and song, maybe just to temporarily distract us from partaking in such dramatic accounts. Are you ready, Katrina?
Hello everyone. Today we have gathered here to mark the 4th anniversary of Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine. 4 years of pain, loss and trials, and at the same time 4 years of incredible strength, unity and resilience of Ukrainian people. 4 years ago, the world woke up to the sound of explosions. But together with the sirens, our dignity awakened as well. We realized that Ukraine is not just a territory on the map. It is people. It is mother who wait. It is children who dream. It is soldier defending life. It is volunteer holding the home front. It is each of us making a small but meaningful contribution to our shared victory every single day. Today, we do not only remember, we give thanks. We thank our defenders. We thank those who gave the most precious gift, their lives for the freedom of Ukraine. We thank those who continue to fight on the front lines, in hospitals, in schools, in cities and villages and across the world, preserving the Ukrainian language, culture and faith. We as well thank all of Irish people. Thank you. Today, Ukraine is a symbol of resilience for the entire world. They tried to break us, but we became stronger. They tried to divide us, but we became closer to one another. Because our strength is in trust. Our strength is in love for our land. Our strength is in unity. And it is about this love, deep, sincere, unconditional, that the next song speaks. A song that for many has become a prayer, a talisman, and a reminder of who we are. And now you will hear songs, My Ukraine, as a symbol of our faith, our memory, and our hope.
Thank you, Katrina. You know, over the last 4 years, I've so often described Ukraine as a nation of courage, which is true. There's also a nature of culture and talent. And the war in Ukraine is not about territory. The war in Ukraine, Russia's aggressive war in Ukraine is to destroy Ukrainian culture and the beautiful songs that Katrina sings at her events and that she sung here tonight. This is what Russia have a problem with, not with territory. And we need to be mindful of this when we talk about the war in Ukraine, especially when we hear these deals that are being made about so many different things. There is no deal on culture, heritage and history is concerned. Thanks again, Katrina. The next piece is a piece called Death by Silence. And Sophia, the young girl, the Ukrainian girl from the Dnipro, is going to read this passage for us.
By silence. When there was no shooting, there was a terrible silence. It was like we are left alone on earth. There was no one else in the city except us and those who bombed and shoot. From Russian occupied village and settlements, from land, air and sea, everything imaginable was fired at us. Mariupol trembled like in convulsions. When it calmed down and fell into lethargy until the next firing. We did not know what was coming next, nor where we was, what we would like until the next silence. There was times we doubted what this was really happening. Sometimes we thought maybe it's not us. This life, what we are living, is not ours. Could this someone else's dream? In early March, Mariupol's silence looked like very cold and chains. It was almost empty. People went to other areas to relax. Some families managed to leave, while others sat in the basements and cellars. Our house was the liveliest then. Other houses were not as lucky. Dead people were already lying on Mariupol's apartment balconies, in yard, or in burned house. I was scared to go down the stairs with my dog, Angie. We had to go out twice a day. She ran in front but almost did not pull on the flesh. I stopped and looked around the whole time. I know that my dog was thinking, and I know to what she was very scared. She too had to gut feeling she knows silence was not the current of life. This silence was hydrogen of death. My Labrador knew something scary was about to happen. In the yard, Angie began to whine and wag her tail. I whispered to her, "Please, go out." I thought, if I say it a little louder, we are going to be killed. A mine will arrive or a child and will land next to us. And for us will remain dead silence. At night, because of the silence, I could not sleep. I really wanted to forget, my eyes almost closed, but I was waiting for my scary sounds. The Russian tried to break my knot only with heavy shelling, but also we break in between. Silent cannot, deaf and standing. I used to lay on the bed, but I was always ready to grab my dressing gown and threw myself into the hallway along with mom, dog and cat. I started at sailing and was afraid to breathe. Inside of me, everything felt like too fake. There was a stone in the area of the solar plexus. I'm afraid to sleep. If I shall start, I shall may come and I will not wake up, my girlfriend would say. It was like she wanted to control her death. I found if I look at it in the eyes, death flowed hard and live. I did not mind dying in my sleep, but I still called no fear and the silence. I fell asleep when there was shooting and booming. I had no energy to move or talk. I slept cuddled up with animal terror, and the silence came less often than almost forgot whether existed. Today I heard an interview with Russians about their attitude to war. They are ordinary people from a small Russian town. Retirees, middle-aged and young people, but angry, arrogant, bloodthirsty, unconceivable and ruthless. They say there was a varying thing, that we need to kill it because we are Nazis and banderists. That is everything they support their bloody state dictator. President, it will end it when they become haters. There do they get theirs in our land. I look at them and I felt like tsunami of anger and hitting on me. Just like back then in Mariupol during heavy shelling and shelling silence.
That's very much, Sophia. When I was in Ukraine last April in Kiev, in the house I stayed in, the lady of that house had 2 dogs. And the dogs could distinguish between the sounds of sirens, missiles and drones. Absolutely amazing. And absolutely frightening. We returned out to the diary of Katerina Savenko, and an entry from the 26th day of the war, 21st of March 2022, and Margaret will read this excerpt for us.
The city is destroyed. According to the existing data from what we see ourselves and from the stories of people who have all, without exception, become incredibly close to us. I know what has survived. Very little indeed. The Ilizhevsky and Primorsky districts are what remain. The eastern and left banks areas have been reduced to ashes since the war's outset. Volontarovka and Ukraine are devastated, and the centre, Kirova, and the 1723 NKR areas are destroyed. Mirny is on fire. Our beautiful city is being levelled to the ground. Monsters, who needs this? Why do they want our death? And who? We don't understand anything. My precious mom and dad, please live. Forgive me, my dear ones, for everything I did wrong. I kneel before you, kissing your feet and the ground you walk on. May God protect you. My dear friends Sergei, Orlov, Oksanka, Andrei, Lukash, Yana, Vitaly, and Vita, forgive me. I can't even remember all of you right now. Please live. I beg the universe, I beg Mother Earth, just stay alive. My little daughter Nadia, your father and I always wanted only the best for you, worked for you and your future. Forgive us for not being able to give you everything you deserve, my beauty, my smart girl. Believe we are trying to survive, only to pull you out of this hell, to peel off our skin, so that you can have a future, a family, children, a good life. My enchanting girl, live and be happy.
Talk about the prayer of desperation, and I'll just read again, just that little paragraph. When Katerina addressed her parents, which had said, my precious mom and dad, please live. Forgive me, my dear ones, for everything I did wrong. I kneel before you, kissing your feet and the ground to walk on. May God protect you. We hear the stories of we hear a news report from Ukraine. A missile strikes an apartment building, 4 people are killed, 10 people injured, or whatever. And what does that mean? probably doesn't mean a lot to us as we watch that report. And then if we move on to the next item on our television screens, or the next thing that grabs our interest at that particular time. When we talk about people injured, we're talking about something that Irish people would find it very hard to comprehend. And I've seen this on my visit to Ivano-Frankivsk and Colomia, and I visited rehabilitation, the rehabilitation hospitals. See double amputees, men and women blinded, people without arms, legs or hands, the most terrible of things. The next one, the segment, Sophia Gamble Reid was about a little girl called Lisa Check and her mother Christina.
So, Listochek and Mama Kristen. Listochek died instantly. The last thing she saw was her mom and gun down on Metropolitan Street. Lisa was 6 and she was supposed to live for a long time. But the Russian who joined Mariupol decided to kill her. Before she died, Lisa was next to her mother. They were driving by car. Saved from the terrible shelling, they were about to get out of town. There was death in Mariupol and they wanted to live. That is normal when you want to live. But death did not let Lisa go. It took her with it. Lisa looked like an angel, with long hair and clear her eyes. Very gentle and kind. She should not have died. But the shell hit the car and broke it. It was like an egg. Death took her small and deathlessness. Lisa's mom, Christine, both her legs were torn off. Kristen's husband was thrown out of the car, but by an explosive wave would tear off his arm. He was knocked unconscious. Christine could not even dive into the darkness, and the voice seemed to hover around her. Some grandmother helped her free her hand, and then a boy on a bicycle gave her water. Christine was thirsty then. She was being broken by pain. Someone from the Mariupol volunteers helped get her husband to the hospital. He had a better chance to survive than her. She stayed in the car with her little daughter by the dead Lisa. She very much regretted not dying before Lisa, but for the painful shock Christine would have died of headache. Kristen's pain filled the car when Metropolitan Street went the wall of the city. It mingled with other people's pain on the rigid heavens, but heaven refused to help. Kristen was helped by people. She does not know their names. They were able to bring her to hospital under the fire. Little Lisa stayed in the car. She had been there for a while. A woman from nearby still saw a dead long-haired girl, but was afraid to approach. This woman is still scolding herself for not finding the strength to bury Lisa. She was so scared. Lisa reminded her of her own daughter. The woman spread out shakily, approached the car, but still could not control herself to touch the girl. Lisa was later burned by other people, either relatives to volunteer. Kristen not able to go with her on the final journey. At the time she was dying without medication, bandages and painkillers in Mariupol hospital. But miraculously she survived, went through a hell of pain, infection, and what the plan suggested. She is now in Latvia and she really needs our help. She is dreaming of prophecy to learn walk again. This is some kind of nightmare. A young woman dreams of perspective. Before the attack by the Russians, she was strong, happy, healthy. worked in hospital and I stayed with her family by the sea. Now she dreamed what then she learned to walk. Mariupol will become a Ukrainian city again. She will come to Liza's grave. She misses her curly angel so much.
So, Peter, thank you. I think that's really a big home. The reality of what we talk about. We talk about injuries, and we talk about people being wounded. And this is what I want to convey to Irish people. That we try to understand, and we should try to understand the terrible things that are happening in Ukraine. And we must try and continue to try, but we will never understand. We will never be witness to those things. And it's said about Christine, her ambition is to walk again with prosthesis, that she can visit the grave of her little daughter, Mariupol. Mariupol is now under Russian occupation. And whose decision will it be for Christine to visit her daughter's grave sometime? It's now being handed over to Russian speculators, and places where Ukrainian families lived in Mariupol are now being occupied by Russians, just as they did back in 1932-33, when Russia imposed an artificial famine in an attempt to destroy Ukraine. We can only hope that Christine will get to visit the grave of her little girl. Now, ordinary Alice, to read the next passage, every little thing. In 2021, the people celebrated Independence Day in Mariupol, and they sang the Bob Marley classic, Everything Will Be Alright. 1 year later, it was entirely different.
Mariupol was a city in which no one was going to die prematurely. People lived happily until the Russians came. The bombs left huge craters like black holes in space. Our Mariupol space is all messed up. The missile took a house in Chernobyl, along with the family that lived in it. And how many more houses are there? We ran from our friend's house to our apartment. Mom always had to get something. Medicine, stuff with her nephew, sugar, baby, pasta, socks, a dressing gown. One acquaintance recounted a young woman who ran to a friend's house before driving to the other end of the town, where she was going to hide from the planes. Death intervened. The apartment had a direct hit. The young woman did not come out alive. I was waiting for something similar to happen to us. Arguing with my mum was in vain. She was playing with death in the Kazakh district, and I, like a zombie, lied to her. Just as I got outside, gunshots started. But we stubbornly climbed to the 5th floor, waiting for the powerful lightning on the elevator desk. I learned all the graffiti on the walls and stairs, and I was looking at the letters, a language of feverish terror. We did not even know if there was someone behind the closed doors of apartments, except for our neighbours, who were always home and never went down to the basement to take shelter. First they sat with us in the stairwell, but eventually they did not even go out. Sometimes the Russians shot so that the house itself shook. It was like it dodged the shells, but in fact, I think it trembled from fear. The rooms have solid windows. What kind of a builder thought of that? And why so many? And now they are a trap. When we went down to the basement in our apartment, an explosive wave bent the balcony door and broke the windows. We came back in the morning and it was bitterly cold. In the bathroom there was some water left in a plastic bucket, and it was frozen, but only on the top. I bathed in the dark and the shelling with the ice-cold water. But in the basement I was proud that the day did not pass in vain. If I was asked for a last wish, it would be to have a warm soul. I dreamed about it day and night. I wished there was a place where a lot of tide drops could burn the body and hug the shoulders. I would swim to death and die absolutely happy. We were not really trying to survive. Our lives every day hung by a hair. Death was all around us. Somehow my cousin Roman ran into us. He wanted to go to the store on Freedom Square for bread for his son Sava. I was told that the store must issue social bread. Roman did not know if the store was open or how long one has to wait in line. He had to go there, through the square, the same square where children sang, "Everything will be all right" on Independence Day. Now there were crushed trees and benches lying about and shells that did not explode. None of us knew for sure if the store was open. But Russia could not bear that brief respite, so the firing had to begin. Mom asked Roman not to go anywhere and even offered an alternative. We had an almost fresh bagel left. It was very neat and tidy, as if from a more prosperous life. A lovely backyard for little Sava. Roman agreed to not go through that dangerous area to the primary store. Maybe then we cheated that for a little while, at least. Roman died 10 days later. He was torn apart by a mine.
Now we'll ask Katrina and her friends to enchant us with one more Ukrainian song.
Сьогодні ми згадуємо 4 роки війни і говоримо про силу, біль та тишу після сирен. Іноді біль падає тихо, як сніг, вкриває наші спогади та думки. Війна навчила нас жити між світлом і темрявою, між надією і тривогою. Вона зробила нас сильнішими, але оголила серце до межі. І кожен із нас знає це відчуття, коли зовні ти тримаєшся, а всередині заметіль. Але навіть під найхолоднішим снігом залишається життя, пам'ять, любов. Зараз прозвучить пісня «Сніг» Ірини Білих, яка переклала на українську мову свою пісню з легендарними словами про лютий. Це пісня, яка торкається найтонших струн душі та нагадує, що після найсуворішої зими завжди приходить весна. Today we remember 4 years of war and speak about strength, pain and the silence after the silence. Sometimes pain falls quietly, like snow, covering our memories and thoughts. The war has taught us to live between light and darkness, between hope and anxiety. It made us stronger, but also laid our hearts bare. Each of us knows that feelings when outwardly you hold on, but inside a blizzard reigns. Yet even under the coldest snow, life, memory, and love remain. Now you will hear snow, a song, that touches the deepest string of the soul and remind us that after the hardest winter, spring always comes.
In the early days of the war, I'm sure you heard so much about the cities of Bucha and Irpin. And when I visited Ukraine last September and also November, I went to Bucha and also Irpin. And I visited the State Tax University in that city. And they, in that institution, they asked me what brought me to Ukraine. I said I collected stories from survivors and from eyewitnesses, and I tried to document those and bring them back to Irish people, so that Irish people somehow understand the terrible things that happened in Ukraine. And many of you Irish people will not be familiar, I'm sure, with Irpin or with Bucha, outside of hearing on a news headline. But the Western world and the free world was pushed today to the courage and bravery of the territorial defence armies of Bucha, Irpin, Hostona and Shalmey. You perhaps are not aware that when the Russian tanks crossed the Belarusian border 4 years ago today, they measured it then 65 kilometers. The distance from Bucha, Irpin, Hostona to Kiev is 26 kilometers. Had it not been for the bravery of those people who took on the knives of the army of the Russian Federation, I can guarantee you the tanks of the Russian army would not be today east of the Dnipro. At the very least, we've got the borders of Europe, Poland, Estonia, and Latvia. We would have different concerns today. So, to the brave people of Ireland, we owe a big debt. And when I was at that university, the academics at that institution pleaded with me, please tell our story, we have a story to tell. And I've got many accounts from those people and compiled it into a booklet that I'm waiting to come back from the printers. Paul is going to read a little excerpt of some of the, just in a short passage, of some of the material that I got from the very first days of that war.
From accounts compiled by the administration staff of the State Tax University of Ireland, March 8, Women's Day in Ireland. We greeted everyone for the holiday. The news at the watch post was grim. Negotiations brought no results. People mainly wanted updates about Ireland and ways to evacuate. Everyone was worried about their own safety, which is understandable. Gas had run out, so we could no longer buy water for tea as we had done yesterday, using the private sector resources. At 10 a.m, the generator was promised to be started. Hopefully, we could get hot water and charge phones. If the phones died, there would be no communication with the outside world. It was snowing outside, but this beauty brought no joy. I hope that this will not always be the case. Everything should end in victory. After 3 p.m, panic began. A young man ran in, urging everyone to evacuate. People started running out of the basement. I tried to stop them, but I was only partially successful. I spoke with the bus driver after he had returned. He said he brought people to Romanica. The bridge to Kiev is destroyed. The rest walked on foot. Whether volunteers met them there, 'tis unknown. I am worried about those who left. There is no communication. The war continues. People keep running to me for advice. I try to support everyone. I listen to the radio and share all the news I hear. At 9:45 a.m, heavy gunfire was heard from Romanica. At 10 a.m, I went to the main building for updates. People from the watch post were already waiting. God grant us wisdom and patience. Green corridors were agreed upon. Part of the people from the dormitory were evacuated. Particularly restless individuals left. The American citizen was taken. Good luck to him. The most resilient remained. We hold on. I managed to call home and calm everyone a bit. Later, after the war, I will find out who spread false news that we were trapped under debris. Panic is a terrible thing. People united and helped each other. This terrible ordeal has made people rethink their lives, relationships and values. We value life. Everything else is secondary. Evening news reported that buses were not released at Stoyanka, 50 of them. What will they do in the forest? Horrible. The radio said nothing. Tomorrow I will try to contact them from the 7th floor. Thank you.
What will they do in the forest? In September, I met a man in the municipal district head office in Bucha, a man called Dmitry Yavchenko. And I spent half a day in that man's office. And he took me through the work that he was doing. And so far he's documented 531 people killed in Bucha. Many of them shot at point blank, with their hands behind their back, tied behind their back. Many of them showing signs of torture. Now he's working on the corpses that have been unearthed from the European forest, and it is not a pretty task. And When we talk about peace and negotiations in Ukraine, these are terrible war crimes, and there should be only one negotiation, is when with the Court of International Justice convene in The Hague and convict those people who perpetrated these terrible, terrible things on innocent civilians. Like I say, Ukraine, when Catherine in her music, I say Ukraine is a nation of courage, or a nation of culture. Ukraine is a nation of courage. But Ukraine is also a nation of great faith. And when you go to Ukraine, you see so many churches from three different religions. And in prayer will stop the war, and show that the war would have stopped long ago. But people still continue to hold the faith, to believe in a higher providence, and to hope and pray for a better day. Sophia from the Libra is going to read a little passage, and it's called God, Where Art Thou?
God, where art thou? God did not hear everyone. He was distracted by the explosion of bullets and shells. Artillery, the mortars, intercepted our prayers. The shells seemed to also pray incessantly, only not to God, but to death. We were alive but weak. We are miserable and cold. Our defenders did not have time for prayers. They put up a brave fight. We pray for them, how skillful and courageous they were. We had stranger requests from God. He must have been wondering. He asked for the defenders to protect us, and he protected them. We know what God was afraid of far away, and they were near. Our brave defenders, they're the only ones who stood in us all of this time. Russian planes ruled the sky, turned off the sun, and prevented us from communicating with God. Our ties with Him were broken. Even heroic Kyivstar mobile network operator could not fix it. And while God was out of reach, the pilots were killing us, and Mariupol continued to be prey. The city turned into the huge temple destroyed by barbarians. True, when the plane went into the first orbit, we forgot the words of the prayer. We just wanted for heat from the sky and did not remember anything. We were shaken and glittering of teeth. Another bomb fell nearby but did not fall on us. But we felt the explosive side wave creeping closer, counting the planes and waiting for the death to arrive. And to God, as before, we did not cry. Yet, we were alive and not even injured, and the next to us, loved us, friends and neighbors died. There is a supposition that God heard something, but He just could not give a sign. Reports from Him to us were intercepted by Russian planes. When the first bombs fell on my city, I was in basement imagining the face of the Russian pilot. He wanted to hit the target, stay focused and focused. When the plane entered the second target, I thoughtfully looked into his eyes and asked him not to kill us. And from that I improved when the bomb would return to plane and pilot died. And all of us remained alive. But the Russian planes and missiles did not end. Which way does the God look? It seems to us what God should hear or despair prayer. Someone mumbled the words of the Pater Noster, someone who still held hope. My 7-year-old nice warrior prayed for a short while. Keywords as always sounded jumbled and funny. My mom and I used to laugh at her attractions, but now we listen silently and we believe it. She is the one who will whisper to God. He will understand her unused shared languages and will stop the war. The whole city, Mariupol, asked God to see what was happening on the land of one's peaceful territory. Where Russian planes flew, ground artillery, ship cannons or tanks, directed blows in entrances and windows. The city answered with prayer. My city in those days was a place endless prayer. Even those who used to say, I do not believe, prayed. I know that does not make any sense, but we still pray. We tormented the Most High every minute but day the night Russian planes turned the city first into ruins, then wreckage, when garbage. We called on the Lord to come to our rescue. We talked about ourselves to Him, complained about the martyrs, and waited for a reaction from Him. The shells broke the floors of house, tearing people apart and making huge craters in the ground. The explosives waved, choked, and lungs were asked to the walls. We were away from ripped everything that was in its path. Tanks moved among the ruins and looting, burning like a huge candle. God was not responding, and I was offended by Him. I did not understand. Why not punish our oppressions immediately? Why does not the law of the boomerang end? And yesterday I looked into the sky over Wilshire here in Germany. It was the same as Mariupol before the war, a quiet sky with stars. I thought, maybe in Mariupol we were not here because of radio shells, and if you ask now, maybe we will be hurt, maybe God will be respond.
Thanks of the now we will read the last passage that we read this evening from the diary of Katerina Semenko. It was written on the 34th day of the war, 29th of March 2022. So we're calling it March. To read a little passage.
For days now, I sleep in my daughter's bed in our apartment. My knees hurt bad, and by night they just twist in unbearable pain. Shooting continues relentlessly. Even bullets fly over our heads in the yard. If we had witnessed all of this in the first days, we probably all would die of heartbreak. We want to go to Nicky's, even if just to see how it is like outside. We could get water from their house, rainwater. Today I washed the floor, heated water from Sasha's barn, and washed myself thoroughly from head to toe. Zabadina's nephew is a firefighter. He let us get 2 buckets of water from the fire station. Thank you, young man. A couple from the village of Murley passed by looking for humanitarian products because they have 4 children and there is nothing to eat anymore. I asked who they had as contact and directed them to Oksana Street. They say it is relatively peaceful there.
This is where Katrina's diary abruptly ends. Fortunately for posterity, Katrina Semenko was not the only resident of Mariupol that kept a written account of those initial days of the Russian attack upon that city. We can piece together the details of the final days of Katrina's life from testimonies given by her daughter Nadia, eyewitness accounts by neighbours from the apartment complex, and finally, from a nurse known as Nadeshka, who had heroically administered to the wounded and dying prior to hospital number 1 finally being obliterated under relentless Russian bombing. An explosion strikes in the yard. Vitaly ran first, with Katerina behind him. And at that moment, the second explosion. Vitaly died instantly. Katerina is seriously injured. She hid in the basement with her daughter for 1 day. On March 30th, she was moved to hospital number 1. Katerina was on the 2nd floor and her daughter Nadia in the basement. The daughter climbed the stairs to her mother, gave her water and whatever comfort she could. The doctors had all but gone by then. With the surviving right hand, Katerina wrote on her phone telling her daughter to keep the diaries. On April 2nd, the hospital went up in flames from shelling. Katerina had hip, shoulder and jaw fractures. She could not escape the flames that engulfed the hospital and was badly burned. She jumped from the 2nd floor and her body fell under blown out windows and debris. Her mother and mother-in-law found her there. Although weak, she was miraculously still alive. Katerina did write a note to her mother on April 1st or 2nd.
Mother, I am hurt. At City Hospital number 1, all the doctors have left. Broken leg and my face is torn. Vitaly is dead. Nadia is in the hospital basement.
This note was delivered to her mother in the village of Mirny by some unknown person. Both Katerina and Vitaly's mother went to the hospital. They could not find their Katerina or Nadia, and having lost all hope, were about to return home. Katerina lay under a checker bag, and it was there that mother accidentally saw her daughter. Katerina died in her mother's arms on April 4 in the basement of some house. The women eventually buried their children, Katerina and Vitaly. Now the Savenka family has found eternal rest in the old Crimean cemetery. Katerina is forever 42, Vitaly 47. Daughter Nadia and mother survived. Ludmila Petrova, Katerina Savenko's mother, took 2 notebooks and a diary with her to the unoccupied territory.
No more words or no more tears. For what?
We have just 3 short passages left to read. And I think, David, when I wrote the book about the sitting in grief and fear, it's just, I think, 60 pages in length, and it contains 31 stories. And some people have wondered why they not write a bigger book with more stories. And I contend that if you're not touched by the 31 stories in those 60 pages, you are touched somewhere already, or you do not want to be touched. These are heartbreaking accounts, I'm sure you'll agree. Just take the version of me who wrote those, who transcribed those. The courageous survivors and eyewitnesses and actual authors, I have only the editor. But they have touched me in a way that I cannot turn back from that. And I will say this to every Ukrainian, either here in Ireland or wherever you are in Ukraine. You may go back to your home, but you will never, ever return from this war. Nobody does.
How many more lives must be sacrificed for this war to shrink, diminish in size and crawl into the black hole that is called hell? For what right has my life been ruined? What did I do to the Russian pilot who dropped bombs on my city? I know how many steps are from my house to the nearest arch. I counted them even when I ran under fire. 42 steps. It was easier for me to count the steps than to count the explosions. There was a concrete column in the house opposite. I was holding on to its back wall, and shells were bursting around me. This was my safety island. One time it turned out to be busy. There was a girl standing there, and I panicked, just rooted to the spot. But for some reason, I was not killed by debris or torn by a mine. Was not meant to be.
Uncle Mitya sits on the bench at his little girl's grave. The sight is unbearable. We try to support him as much as possible, but I think our words here are superfluous, and there are simply no words at all. Only stone face, empty eyes, calloused, cracked hands from dirt and cold and wounded hearts, in which Athena sparks or hope still glimmers. I want to return to my city, so bad what I dream about it at night. Not ruined, not destroyed, but the way it used to be. There is snowy houses and patios with happy children. Now all the yard are the same, abandoned net and dead.
On April 2nd, Daniel, 16-year-old, was with us. His mom died in the theatre. It was a mess, a mince of people. The boy had a damaged shoulder. When his dad found him, he cried, trembled with joy, such as the power of his emotions when he found his son. He wanted to pick the boy up, but the doctors would not allow it. He found a wheelchair, and together they emerged from the bunker. Immediately, they were shot dead. As more wreckage was cleared, I saw my own son. He was lying on top. There was nothing or nowhere with which to bury him. Everything was in turmoil. I tried to dig up the earth with my hands. The dogs were beginning to gnaw at the human remains. I ran across to the neighbours. She was looking for a shovel, but even they had all been burned. I left Mariupol. I did not bury my child.
I want to really thank the bottom of the heart of four readers who have delivered so eloquently here. Nice to think these horrible stories to others. It is not easy. It is not easy to hear those, be part of those stories, and yet remain unaffected. Thanks to each and every one of you. I want to say a special thanks to Sophia from the lead point. Not only did Sophia stand in on short notice, Sophia and the citizens of the neighbourhood could write these accounts, and perhaps more horrific ones, if such were possible. Again, thanks to each and every one of you. And if I'd like to say a few closing remarks. I suppose, on an occasion like this, I suppose it's appropriate that we thank those people who contribute to these occasions. And first of all, to Eamon, Jackie, the staff here at the library. I came in here just off the street one day, just with this idea, not really knowing how to work it. And these people, straight away, they said, they bought into my enthusiasm. It doesn't have the proper word, but they bought into that. And could see that this was something that was important to me. And I don't think there's anything more important on the 24th day of February than to mark the full-scale invasion of the war in Ukraine. I'd like to thank people like Cahir and the District to come here and to officially open our thanks are available Muhammad. And again to the readers who read so eloquently and who really obliged me in doing this and trying to put this together. And to Catherine, our singers, but they haven't heard the last of them yet, they haven't. Of course, I thank you all, but I don't think any of you need thanks, or any of you require thanks, or any of you ask for thanks. And whenever we have an opportunity in life to make life better for someone, we should thank the other person for giving us that opportunity. But protocol decrees that I thank you all, so we'll do that. Thanks to the audience, of course. And it would be usual to say, I hope you enjoyed yourself. I said opposite tonight. I hope you did not enjoy yourself. I hope you, at the very least, that you're disturbed, at most that you're outraged and angry at what you just heard here tonight. This is a sad anniversary, the saddest of all anniversaries. It's an anniversary of unwanted and unprovoked aggression against a peaceful state. Do not worry for the fact that you missed this anniversary, because there are many more to follow. On the 6th of March, Lieutenant Zachary Vashni and Sergeant Roman Shenanxie from the engineers of the 2nd Platoon of the European Defence Force gave their lives that detonated the bridge that stuck that halted the convoy of Russian tanks and air down in Kiev. And like I said earlier, allowing us today to live in a different Europe than had they not done so. We owe so much to those people. If we go to the 18th, the 16th of March, the eve of the patron saint, the holiday of our patron saint St. Patrick, the day before that, it would be the 4th anniversary of the bombing of the theatre in Mariupol. And on the 16th of March, a rumour emanated in Mariupol that a humanitarian corridor was to be established that would allow people to evacuate. And it was rumoured that the convoy would begin at the Mariupol, the next drama theatre in Mariupol. 600 people at least gathered in that theatre in the hope of catching buses to evacuate the territory. 2 men climbed to the roof of the building and they painted the word children in Ukrainian. They were not too long down off the roof, and Russia bombed the Donetsk drama theatre in Mariupol to oblivion. At least 600 people were killed. Today, in Russian occupied territory, the theatre is being restored, and it will now, under Russian occupation, facilitate the dancing of Russians on the boats of innocent Mariupols. 8th of March this year, will be the first anniversary of something to me very important. When 2 ladies, Tata Kepler and Lili Umarova, addressed the European Parliament in the context of Women's Day in Mariupol, the context of Women's Day, International Women's Day. And you can look this up on social media, and they gave accounts to the Parliament that would bring the most wholehearted person to tears. A year has almost passed by. They were heard on that particular day, but has their voice had any long-term effect? If you get to the 6th of December, a young 11-year-old boy, Roman Alexis, addressed the European Parliament also, and he gave an account of the last time he saw his mother. A missile struck the apartment block in complex in Viennese, and 34 people were killed. His mother, the last time he saw his mother, he just saw her hair under the rug. 4 years since the Russian army rolled into Ukraine. We mark 4 years of tragedy, 4 years of death, 4 years of war crimes, 4 years of the loss of human life. We also mark 4 years of proud Ukrainian defiance. Kiev was to fall in days, Kharkiv was to fall in hours. But none of that happened. Today those cities are still under Ukrainian control and will remain so. It is also an anniversary, which I term as 4 years of Western indifference. 3 years of American indifference followed by 1 year of American hostility. We live in a world, a strange world, where the words don't mean anything anymore. And when it was put to a diplomat, simply who invaded Ukraine, that diplomat would not give a straight answer. Ukraine did not invade itself, Ukraine did not kill its own citizens. And there's so much propaganda that falls on people's ears and is sadly consumed by some. Much of this is around language. And I heard a beautiful story just last week from a lady from Donetsk who told me about a young boy in the occupied territory. And the teacher called the class together to sing the Russian national anthem. And he saw that one young boy was not moving his lips. And he called out the boy and he said, "Why are you not singing?" And he said, that is not my anthem, I do not know that anthem. And the teacher said to the boy, "Go home and learn that anthem and you come back here and I will get you to stand in front of the class and sing." And sing the Russian anthem. The boy came back after 1 day and the teacher called him to the top of the class. He said, "Now you will sing the anthem." And the boy began to sing and he sang the anthem in Ukraine. We see on the neighbouring countries, especially Hungary and Slovakia, where regimes want to take advantage of the situation in Ukraine. And we see he talks about deals for rare earth minerals, like vultures would gather over a carcass, but Ukraine is no carcass, and Ukraine's bones are not for picking. And even we see, what I thought was terrible, Rowan Ryanair, the chief executive, is saying that he would do deals with the airports to fly flights into Ukraine when the war ends, provided they give a beneficial financial deal. Such a thing to say when people are being murdered and mutilated daily across Ukraine. In a world where values have become distorted and we have lost our moral compass, or certainly it needs readjustment, and our words have no meaning anymore. And this is something we need to be vigilant of, and not allow ourselves to be brought into this world of propaganda and all that goes with it. And I will forever quote the words of a young lady from Colombia, a young lady who I befriended in that city. And her name is Veronica Livshaw. Veronica, one time she, in a message, said to me, if it challenges the intellect of the human mind and it destroys the structural values of the heart, that one is not outraged by the see the statement that black is white. We live in the book 1984. And let's not live in the book 1984 by choice. There's a tendency maybe to offer a hint of appeasement to the right-wing nefarious actors who dominate social media and in other political arenas of our society. But we can do much better than that. And if we want to build a free society, we cannot build it on a community of shared grievance. We can only build it on a community of shared pain. And a community where we think of others. And we think of others as suffering, those who are less fortunate. And right now we need to think of Ukraine, who daily, nightly, are under drone and missile attacks, cyber warfare, hybrid warfare. And let me decide what we stand on. Let us stand with those people. When I wrote my book, when I wrote an introduction to that book, Anniv was sitting in grief and fear. I wrote in that introduction, I said, history will be the ultimate judge of the free world and where we stood during this time of crisis and darkness. I said, history will record what happened when we call our generation as that which stood tall and upright when the forces of evil attempted to distinguish the lives of civilization, or alternatively, as the generation that placed the kiss of Judas Iscariot on the face of Ukraine. When I wrote that, I perhaps had a remote feeling, maybe that betrayal was a possibility. But now when I look across the Atlantic, I see it as a distinct possibility. And that is why us and all people who carry in their hearts a love of humanity, nothing else, just the love of our fellow man, that we stand tall and upright in this time of darkness, and that we not betray the values that were handed on to us by our generation of good people, and generations of people who fought the struggle to be free from the tyrannical empire also. So, with that, they will finish with people Ukraine. People Ukraine is the anthem of Ukraine.
Now, thank you all again very much for coming here tonight, and I again would like to thank John Connors for reminding us all I can say is that I hope we don't have to do this next year, but time will tell, okay? So thank you all again, and the singing was fantastic. And safe home to everybody, and please keep Ukraine at the top of your minds, because it's not over yet. Although I think it might be turning slowly in Ukraine's favour, hopefully. Good night, everybody, and thank you. Thank you.